Mom, Professor Drama. Throwaway account because a few friends follow my main and I'm not ready for them to connect the dots. This is going to be long, and honestly I don't know if anyone will even care, but I need to get it out of my system. So here it is, my parents' marriage basically exploded because my mom fell in love with my professor. Yeah. I still feel weird typing that. For context, I'm 22M, in my last year at university. My parents were married for 24 years, the kind of marriage where people assumed they were rock solid. Dad's the steady, quiet type. Mom is charismatic, talkative, the person who organizes all the neighborhood BBQs and somehow remembers everyone's birthdays. They balanced each other. Or at least, that's what I thought. It started last year. I had to take this required elective, literature of all things, not my strong suit. Enter Professor M. He's early 40s, tall, with that slightly scruffy academic look, beard, corduroy jackets, the works. The kind of guy who can make a 300-page Victorian novel sound like the most riveting thing in the world. I wasn't particularly close to him at first, but I'd go to office hours, he'd give me feedback, and whatever, it was fine. The first weird sign came when my mom offered to drive me to campus one day. Totally normal, right? Except when I mentioned I had to swing by Professor M's office to drop off a paper, she perked up. Like way too much. Oh, is he the one you mentioned who knows about old poetry? She asked. I said yeah. She said something like, I should stop by and thank him for helping you. I love meeting your teachers. At the time, I brushed it off. My mom is social. She chats with random cashiers and somehow knows the life story of our mailman. But when we got to campus, she insisted on coming inside with me. I was embarrassed but figured whatever. We found Professor M, and the second they started talking, I swear the air shifted. Like watching two magnets click together. She laughed at his dry jokes, he complimented her taste in books, she dropped that she used to read a lot of poetry in college, and I stood there like a third wheel in my own errand. After that day, she kept bringing him up randomly. Did Professor M like your essay? You should invite him over for dinner sometime, it's nice to thank good teachers. Stuff like that. I kept thinking, she's just being friendly. Right? Then dinner actually happened. Mom invited him, along with a couple other people, supposedly to celebrate the end of midterms. He showed up, brought a bottle of wine, and instantly slid into our family dynamic like he'd been there forever. Dad was polite but quiet, kind of withdrawn. Mom, meanwhile, was glowing. Laughing too hard, brushing her hair back, leaning in when he spoke. I wanted to crawl under the table. That night I asked her, half joking, if she had a crush. She rolled her eyes and said, "Don't be ridiculous, I'm just being nice." But her cheeks went red. Over the next few months, it snowballed. She started auditing one of his evening lectures, for fun. She'd come home and gush about how brilliant his analysis was. Dad started making passive comments, "Guess I should be reading more poetry these days." He said it with this dry humor, but I could hear the hurt underneath. I wish I could say I stepped in earlier, but I didn't. I thought maybe it was just a phase, some weird intellectual crush. But then came the text messages. I only found out because she borrowed my laptop one day, logged into her email, and forgot to log out. Curiosity got the better of me, I know, it was a violation, but I had this pit in my stomach. And there it was, an email thread between her and Professor M, long, flirty messages about books, late night, thinking of you, notes, even jokes about sneaking off together. Nothing explicit, but definitely not platonic. I felt sick. I debated telling Dad right away, but I froze. Maybe because I didn't want to be the one to break him. Maybe because I thought it would somehow fizzle out. Except it didn't. One night, around Christmas, Dad confronted her. I was upstairs but I heard it all. His voice was low, pained. "Is there something going on with you and him?" And her silence said everything. Finally she whispered, "I didn't mean for this to happen." I'll never forget the sound Dad made. Not yelling, not crying, just this guttural sigh, like the air had been knocked out of him. I stayed frozen on the stairs as Mom tried to explain. She said it wasn't physical, just emotional. She said she felt alive again when she talked to him. Dad asked, "And what about us? What about the life we built?" She didn't answer. The months after were chaos. Counseling sessions. Awkward dinners where no one spoke. Me avoiding campus because I didn't want to run into Professor M. Eventually, Mom moved out, temporarily, which has now turned into a full separation. Dad's trying to keep things together, but he looks 10 years older. And me? I'm stuck between resenting her and missing her. The kicker? I still have to sit in Professor M's class twice a week. He knows I know. I can see it in his eyes. He avoids calling on me. Once, after class, he asked if I was doing okay, and I wanted to punch him. Instead, I just walked away. I don't know how to process all this. Part of me hates my mom. Part of me hates him more. Part of me feels guilty, like maybe if I hadn't introduced them this wouldn't have happened. Rationally I know that's not true, but it gnaws at me. And the worst part? I overheard Mom telling my sister that she's thinking about making it official with Professor M. As in, divorce Dad and move on with him. Like our family was some outdated novel she could just close and start a new one. I don't know what I'll do if that happens. I don't know what Dad will do. He's devastated but still holding out hope. And me? I'm just trying to finish my degree without completely losing my mind. Anyway, if you made it this far, thanks. Writing this out feels surreal, like I'm describing someone else's life. But it's mine. And it sucks. Mom, Professor Drama. Point 2. Throwaway again because this story has basically taken over my life and I'm not ready for people in real life to know the whole picture. A few people asked for an update, so here's part 2. If you didn't read my first post, short recap: my mom, charismatic, social, larger than life, fell in love with my professor, which basically detonated my parents' marriage. Dad is wrecked, I'm stuck taking classes with this guy, and Mom is halfway out the door. That's where I left off. So, yeah. It got worse. After Mom moved out, she rented this tiny apartment downtown. It was supposed to be just for space while she and Dad figured things out. At least that's what she told us. I'd drive over sometimes with my sister, drop off groceries, or help her with little stuff like setting up Wi-Fi. The first time I walked in, though, I noticed a second toothbrush by the sink. I wanted to throw up. She must have seen me staring because she rushed to say, "Oh, that's just for when your sister visits." Except my sister hates staying there. Later, I found one of those tweed jackets hanging by the door. You can guess whose it was. Meanwhile, Dad's house turned into this museum of silence. He still cooked dinner every night, set out 2 plates out of habit, then scraped one into Tupperware. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at the empty chair across from him, like he expected her to walk in. He started going on these late evening walks, not saying where. One night I followed him, creepy, I know. He just sat on a bench near the park, staring at families going by. I didn't even interrupt, I couldn't handle the weight of it. As for me? Every class with Professor M felt like psychological torture. He acted overly formal, like if he kept things professional, then none of this was real. Once, during a lecture on betrayal in Shakespeare, he paused mid-sentence and looked straight at me. No one else noticed, but I swear we locked eyes for a solid 5 seconds. My stomach dropped. He turned back to the board and kept going, but it was like he knew exactly what he was doing. Around this time, Mom finally admitted to Dad that it was more than emotional. She sat us down, me, Dad, and my sister, at the kitchen table. Her exact words: "I didn't plan it, but I'm in love with him." My sister burst into tears. Dad just stared at her, expressionless. Then he asked, "So that's it? 24 years and you're done?" Mom reached for his hand, but he pulled back. I felt like I was watching someone deliberately break a priceless vase. After she left that night, Dad muttered, "She's already gone." I think that was the first time he accepted it. What made it worse? Word started spreading. Small town, gossip travels fast. Suddenly neighbors were giving us pity looks. Someone even asked me if I was getting extra credit from Professor M now. I wanted to disappear. My sister withdrew completely. She stopped hanging out with friends, started failing classes. One night she screamed at me, "You introduced them. This is your fault." I couldn't even argue, because deep down, I'd thought the same thing. But then, something unexpected happened. I ran into Professor M outside of class, at a coffee shop near campus. He looked tired, older somehow. He asked if we could talk. Against my better judgment, I sat down. He said, "I never meant for this to hurt you." I laughed, actually laughed in disbelief. He went on about how genuine his feelings were for my mom, how he respected my dad but couldn't deny the connection. I told him, "You've destroyed my family. You don't get to dress that up as fate." His face tightened, but he didn't argue. When I got up to leave, he said quietly, "Someday you'll understand." That line has been echoing in my head ever since, and I hate it. The divorce papers came a few weeks later. Dad didn't fight much, he just wanted it over with. Mom signed them like she was relieved. Watching them at the lawyer's office felt surreal, like seeing strangers dismantle a house brick by brick. Afterward, Dad sat in the car and cried. First time I'd ever seen him cry. I didn't know what to do except sit there and let him. And yet, despite everything, part of me kept hoping she'd change her mind. But then came the moment that killed that hope. Mom invited me and my sister over for dinner at her apartment. We went, mostly out of obligation. Halfway through, the door opened and in walked Professor M, carrying groceries, acting like he lived there. Mom smiled at him the way she used to smile at Dad. My sister pushed her chair back and left the table. I followed. We didn't even say goodbye. Since then, it's been full-on war inside me. Anger, guilt, grief, repeat. Dad tries to be strong, but I hear him at night pacing the halls. My sister barely talks to Mom. And Mom? She acts like she's found some grand love story, like the collateral damage is worth it. Maybe it is for her. For us, it feels like betrayal layered on betrayal. The kicker? Graduation's coming up. Parents usually sit together, cheer for their kid, take photos. But now? Dad refuses to be anywhere near him. Mom insists she won't miss it. And Professor M is obviously going to be there, in full academic regalia, literally on the stage. It's going to be a circus, and I'm dreading it. I don't know how this ends. Maybe she marries him. Maybe Dad eventually finds peace. Maybe I cut her out of my life. All I know is that right now, every time I see her hand brush against his, I feel like the ground is splitting under me. And here's the cliffhanger I never thought I'd write. Last week, Mom told me that Professor M wants to meet Dad, man to man. She asked if I could help arrange it. I don't even know what to say to that. Mom Professor Drama Point 3. Throw away again. This is part 3, the part 1 honestly didn't know if I could even write. But here we are. If you followed my last 2 posts, you know the gist. My mom left my dad for my professor, and it wrecked our family. Dad's devastated, my sister's furious, and I've been stuck in the middle, trying to graduate while watching the wreckage pile up. Last time, I left off with the bombshell. Mom said Professor M wanted to meet my dad, man to man. Well, that meeting actually happened. It took place at this neutral spot, some low-key diner off the highway, the kind with peeling vinyl booths and a jukebox that hasn't worked in decades. Dad agreed mostly because he didn't want to give Mom more reasons to say he was being difficult. I went along because I didn't trust either of them not to twist things. My sister refused to come. She said, if he shows his face, I'll throw coffee at him. Professor M showed up looking painfully academic, even in a diner, scarf, jacket, messy hair. He sat down across from Dad like they were equals. The tension was so thick I could hear the squeak of the booth every time someone shifted. He started with, "I owe you an apology." My dad just stared. M went on about how he never intended to hurt anyone and how he respected the years Mom and Dad had together. I could see Dad's jaw clench tighter with every word. Finally Dad said, "You didn't respect it. You destroyed it." His voice cracked at the end, and that hit harder than if he'd yelled. Mom tried to mediate, saying things like, "We can all move forward if we just," but Dad cut her off. "Forward with what? Him playing stepdad?" The diner went quiet for a moment, even the waitress froze mid-pour. I wanted to disappear into the cracked booth cushions. The rest of the meeting wasn't explosive, no fists thrown, no coffee tossed, but it was brutal in a different way. Dad finally said, "You can have her. Just know what you've taken." Then he slid out of the booth and left. Watching his back as he walked out, I realized it wasn't anger that defined him anymore. It was grief hardened into resignation. After that, things accelerated. Mom and Professor M went public. She changed her Facebook profile picture to one of them at some artsy bookstore. People whispered, gossiped, judged. My sister blocked her entirely. I tried to keep contact minimal, but she kept reaching out with cheery texts like, "Dinner soon? He'd love to see you." I couldn't bring myself to respond. Graduation loomed, and the anxiety nearly killed me. I pictured Dad refusing to attend, Mom showing up with Professor M, me standing there in a cap and gown while everyone around me whispered. To my shock, Dad said he would come. "I'm not letting him take this from me too," he told me. His voice was steady, but I knew it cost him to say that. The day of graduation felt like walking into a minefield. The auditorium buzzed with families, camera flashes, cheering. I spotted Dad sitting stiffly near the back. A few rows over, there they were, Mom and Professor M, holding hands like it was the most normal thing in the world. My chest tightened so hard I thought I'd choke. When my name was called, I walked across the stage, shook hands with the dean, and got my diploma. But then, I swear this is true, I locked eyes with Professor M as he sat on stage with the faculty. For one split second, he gave the smallest nod. Like some silent message, "See? We're still connected." I wanted to rip the diploma in half. Instead, I forced a smile for the cameras and walked off. After the ceremony, chaos. Families everywhere, hugging, taking photos. I posed with Dad, with my sister. Mom tried to join, but my sister flat out refused. Mom looked hurt but turned away, clinging to Professor M's arm. It felt like two separate realities colliding in one parking lot. That night, Dad and I sat on the porch with a couple of beers. He said, "I don't know if I'll ever forgive her. But I'll never stop being your dad." That broke me in the best way. I realized then that even though everything else had cracked, the bond between us was still solid. So where does that leave me now? Honestly, still a mess. Mom and Professor M are apparently talking about moving in together officially, maybe even marriage down the line. My sister wants nothing to do with either of them. Dad is slowly rebuilding, he joined a hiking group, started cooking new recipes, even smiles sometimes. As for me, I graduated, and I'm applying for jobs far from home. Not because I want to run forever, but because I need space to breathe. Here's the strangest part, I don't hate my mom completely. I want to, but I can't. She's still the woman who bandaged my knees, who stayed up with me when I was sick, who cheered at every game. But she's also the woman who chose herself and him over all of us. Holding those two truths at once is exhausting. Professor M? I don't know if I'll ever forgive him. Maybe one day he'll just be some gray-haired man I once knew, a footnote in my life. Right now, he feels like the villain in a story I didn't ask to be part of. I guess the point of this ramble is, families don't always implode with fire and shouting. Sometimes they just fracture quietly, with dinners that never happen again, with two toothbrushes in the wrong bathroom, with graduation photos that will always look lopsided. That's where I'm at. Broken but moving forward, one shaky step at a time. Thanks for reading my story. Writing it here has been weirdly therapeutic. If anyone else has been through something like this, you're not alone.